Okay, guys, I'm back again, and we'll start from where we left off yesterday. We are on the fourth chapter now, and once we finish it, we'll be halfway through. Call for Freedom is the fourth chapter, and till now, we have covered a lot of ground in terms of what we have read till now that British government took control of most of India, and before that, I just wanted to touch upon some one important point about Taudis that I want to talk about before I end this chapter. But other than that, I recently read this book called Elon Musk. If you have read this book or not, I'm not sure, but I think if you haven't read this book, then go read it. If you are some sort of a person who wants to build a business, build a product, a brand, somebody who's interested in doing something out of the box, then I think this book is for you because it essentially talks about this entrepreneurial spirit of a guy who believes anything is possible, and someone who gives up on things easily will relate to this particular book a lot in terms of as to why it is happening with him. So I highly recommend you read this book. It is 300 400 odd page book, less than 400 I would say, around if you include all the epilogues and appendixes, 385 pages. So this is one hell of a book. Somebody who wants to read, a biography which inspires him, and makes him believe in the fact that anything is possible. And another book, and also I have actually done a review of this book recently, and there's a video posted in my on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out too. It is in the playlist called Book Reviews. Another book I think you should definitely give a try is Urban Naxals. This one is in Hindi. It is also available in English, and it is one book that got me thinking in terms of what is happening in India and how things function, especially from the point of view of a director who's an acclaimed director. I know if you know this guy, he's Vivek Agnihotri. He has directed Kashmir Files before that. Buddha and a Traffic Jam, and then Tashkent Files and all of that. So you will be surprised to know what he wants to talk about in this book. I don't want to reveal much, but it talks about the kind of state that we as India as country is in, and how the institutions and the intelligentsia and the government and a lot of other people who consider themselves as intellectual function. So it gives his viewpoint, and also a state of affair that he has faced personally, and how he kind of countered all of that, making a film that he wanted to make, Buddha in a Traffic Jam. And at the same time, he encountered people all around him who were against that idea of, the film. So I don't want to reveal much. Again, these are the two books that I want to talk about. I just thought of, coming today and talking about them first. Now, coming back to this book, the idea of me reading to you guys, or not reading, but I'm reading at my place. But when I'm reading the book, what I'm trying to do here is that people who are not into book reading will at least get some sort of environment, like they are virtually sitting on their laptops or on with their phones, and they are seeing me read a book, and maybe they'd want to pick up a book. That's the idea of this live. At the same time, I want to give out that information that I give out in book reviews, but when it's live, and it's every day, it does make a difference. So that is the idea, and I hope you understand the gist of it. So now, before I end this third chapter that we read yesterday, was the first war. The book's name, Land of the Gods, the story of Haryana, and we read the third chapter, the first war. And the last part of it that I said that I'll talk about today is rise of the Taudis, right here. And only last 2 pages talk about what it's all about. So it says that the Pataudi state, the one that is Saif Ali Khan's home, he's a titular Nawab because Now, all these princely states were, or their powers were abolished in 1970. That's when it all went away. But his father was a Nawab. So this Pataudi state was a gift to Faz Talab Khan by Lord General Lake. So that's a history. So Faz Talab Khan would be our Saif Ali Khan's ancestor, you know, dating 8, 9, maybe 10, 12 generation back. So he was somebody who came from Pashtun from Afghanistan. And this guy helped Britishers in the first Anglo-Maratha War of 1803. First or maybe second 1803 war between Maratha and the English. He helped them, English people. He helped English people. So they gifted him this estate. And Faz, his descendants, which is Saif Ali Khan, they still possess his property and the palaces. He was succeeded by Nawab Akbar Ali in 1829, and this was and the role of Nawab, he kind of was limited till 1857, but English, lent support to this particular state. So the eighth Nawab of this, estate or of this lineage was Iftikhar Ali Khan, and this Iftikhar Ali Khan son was Mansoor Ali Khan Pataudi, who is who was who's Saif Ali Khan's father, the actor, the Bollywood actor. So that's the lineage, and their ancestor helped Britishers win English Maratha War. So that's something that is a piece of news for you, right? So that's what this book talks about, and also it talks about, from his mother's side. I mean, Saif Ali Khan's great grandmother's side, great grandmother's side, of course. They were from Bhopal, from princely family of Bhopal, and Saif Ali Khan's grandmother's sister, elder sister, after partition went to Pakistan, and her family was also a renowned family there in Pakistan. And it says that Shahryar Khan, the son of the elder sister, I mean, Saif Ali Khan's great grandmother's sister's elder, son was Shahryar Khan, and he became the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan and was at one point the chairman of Pakistan Cricket Board. So a lot of history here in terms of what this family has achieved, what this Pataudi clan has achieved. All of that is mentioned here, and then it progresses to how other princely states, as I've talked to you earlier, that the princely states of Jhajjar, the Nawab was punished and he was hanged because he did not support Theo Metcalfe when 1857 mutiny happened. So he wanted to take revenge. So, but there were some rulers who supported Britishers, and the book says that they were notably rewarded. Like there is an example of a treasurer of Sirsa, Lala Fateh Chandwas. He was rewarded for his loyalty and granted a seat in Governor's Darbar, and his son was granted 1,000 acres of land. And similarly, you have Bahadurgarh, where the leader, was sent to Lahore because he was ineffective. He was not ruling it properly. Kalsia ruler Sardar Shobha Singh, he rendered services in favor of the British, and both were rewarded for their loyalty, and other Jagidars also of Haryana. So this book ends with the note that Haryana was taken over by the East India Company, and commissions were organized, trials were held, and soon after, the administration of India was taken over by the Britishers. British government. So British government took complete control of India from the hands of East India Company, because East India Company came into India, from under the aegis, under the support of the British government. So that's what it talks about. Now the fourth chapter begins. It's called Call of for Freedom, and I read just one page before I was about to start this live, and got an idea of what this particular chapter is all about. It says that there was a tectonic shift after 1857 revolt in politics and history of India. Badshah, the Mughal emperor, who sat over the throne of Delhi, was now gone. I mean, there was no Badshah anymore. And in February 1858, the region of Haryana was separated from the northwestern provinces. I mean, you say Sis Satluj, the area that was controlled by um Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So that area, it was separated from that area, and the province took the shape of Punjabi Haryana. Now, this is really important because a lot of people have this thought in their head that Haryana was part of Punjab, and a reorganization act happened. If you're not aware of it, then please do read. Right now, I mean, this is something that you would, it'll be news to you that a part of Himachal, which is closer to the borders of Punjab, which is from Ambala onwards, when you go towards Himachal, Bilaspur, and that particular area, Punjab Punjab people claim that that is part of Punjab. That was part of Punjab up until Mandi. So imagine the the total area that they were claiming to be part of Punjab. I mean, they still claim some of the people. So that is how the history is. But this book says that Haryana was always a community of Jats and Sardars and Nawabs, and they had a different, life altogether. And the other region, which was, bordering, that was Punjab, was a different region altogether. Now, I'm talking about a region before partition, not after partition, because if you if you're aware, then Punjab is a big chunk of land which is also a part of Pakistan. So there's a Punjab in Pakistan and there's a Punjab in India. So from that perspective. So the book goes on and says that Haryana was separated from northwestern province and took the shape of Punjabi Haryana. Under the new administrative setup, the region was separated into two divisions: Delhi division, comprising the district of Delhi, Gurgaon, Panipat, and Hisar division, comprising district of Hisar, Sirsa, and Rohtak. And commissioners were appointed at district level, and under them, superintendent, assistant commissioners. And now I'll start reading because haven't read this particular chapter. We'll start with this chapter, and it's about 20 pages, and I'll try and complete it as soon as possible. Then we'll uh, you know be able to talk about it in between as to what this book particular chapter says. The chapter is called for freedom. Guys, I'm still reading, and if you are, uh, if you see this video and you happen to come here, I hope you read a book with me because that's the idea. I'm still reading. I'm just begun. I've read about 2 3 pages, and I hope that you continue reading with me. Hopefully, you can share some information, some thoughts on what you're reading right now. I'm reading Land of the Gods, as you know, and I'll be talking about it pretty soon in about a few minutes. I'll read another 2 3 pages, then I'll give you a gist of what I've read till now in this chapter called For Freedom. And I hope if you are reading any book along with me right now, then do that. It'd be great thing to do happen. And mention the book's name here. I mean, I'll be glad to announce your name alongside the name of the book that you are reading. Please do that. It will be great for other people to also do the same. And just mention the book name and uh, what it is all about in case you want to share your thought. It'll be great. I'm just typing it away on my will help other people join in. Okay, so far we have read, pretty much, I think 8 pages, and this particular part of the book talks about a lot of things in particular. So as I've discussed with you that English men started making those changes in terms of how they wanted to figure out what to do with what, in terms of which king will, or which princely state will do, will rule over which area. So after all of that, Haryana taking shape. And there are two characteristic features that define modern day Haryana. One pertains to the armed forces, and the other in regards to agriculture. So what it means is that Haryana has always been an agricultural state, but a part of it, the northern part of it, belt where the cantonment, the Ambala cantonment, was set by Britishers, became an area where Jats, took part in huge numbers, especially post 1857 mutiny. They took part in huge numbers and joined the British Army, which they mostly were either in army or in agriculture. And there is a line which talks about the state of Haryana, and the writer has written it: दो बेटे तेरे नाम के बाबू, काम बनाएंगे ऑर्डर पे, एक करेगा सेवा तेरी, एक खड़ा से बॉर्डर पे. It means that one of the son will take care of him, and the other son will protect the border. So in a way, it says that, and that's how Haryana was. That mostly most of its charts either joined military or they were part of agriculture. And then, quite similar to the military, agriculturists have also commanded respect in the Haryanvi society. And but with the advent of the British, a new legal administrative system was introduced. Canal building activities were undertaken, and new colonies came up. But another repercussion was that there was a change in the British administrative attitude, which meant that for long there was no construction of new roads. So new roads remained. I mean, they never happened. The new roads never took. I mean, there was no construction of new roads, and there was no way that your business could be facilitated, or agriculture could be done in a better way. So there were very few educational institutions back then, and the only avenues that the young Haryanvis had were either military, as I've said to you, or agriculture. So that development did not really happen uh, of the 19th century, mid 19th century, around 1860 onwards. In this reform administration, and the John Lawrence was appointed the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. So John Lawrence was someone who helped the British, took control of Delhi along with other generals, but he had played an important role. And his son, uh, John, um, not I'm sorry, not his son, but he became the governor of Pani. Give me a second. He became the district collector of Panipat, and a lot of his work talks about how Panipat was back then. Haryana was back then, and Panipat was basically dominated by agricultural charts, cattle rearing Gujars, and Ranghars, who were equally fond of their lands as the charts. So all of that is was happening, and it says that he was of good build, and his term as lieutenant governor, however, ended in February 1859. So he rose to the post of lieutenant governor, and he went back to England, and he was called back again in 1863, and he became the viceroy of India. And during that time, 19th century is when the time. If you're not aware, then let me let you know that 1885 is when Congress, Indian National Congress, was formed, and it was also a time of social awakening. This book talks about Wahhabi movement, which was started by uh, Sayyid Ahmad from Rai Bareilly, UP, but it had its headquarter, its center focal point in Thanesar, which is present day Kurukshetra, and that became the center of Wahhabi activity. And according to him, he said, Sayyid Ahmad said that Muslim in India has one goal, that no true Muslim should live in a land ruled by non-Muslims. So, in pursuit of his mission, he shifted his base, and he wanted to be part of. He wanted a Muslim, to be ruling over India, and not a non-Muslim. So he didn't like Britishers at all. So that's what it particular book talks about, and then it talks about a movement, Arya Samaj movement, which was started by Swami Dayanand Saraswati. Dayanand Saraswati was a social reformer, founder of Arya Samaj, and he found a lot of followers in Haryana. A lot of people have been mentioned here in this book, because at that point in time, a lot of, as I've said to you earlier in the yesterday's stream, that Christian missionaries were really making their headway in India, and they wanted to convert a lot of Hindus into Christianity, as did Aurangzeb back in his time, in 17th century. So here in the 19th century, the Arya Samaj took shape, and Swami Dayanand Saraswati was a Gujarati Brahmin, born in February 1824. So he also came out with this book called the Holy Book of Samajis, called Satyarth Prakash, the True Exposition. And Arya Samaj found huge acceptance, large acceptance, in Haryana, hugely impacting its society and its politics. So, but it stood firmly against Christian conversion, and in a way, Arya Samaj was kind of became an enemy of British government, because they thought that they are against British rule, they're against British way of thinking, and they don't want it. So all of that happened, but what makes sense is that there's a dialogue in Satyar Prakash, that book that came about because of Arya Samaj, because of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. It says that there is a dialogue between Pope and a Jat farmer, Jat peasant, and about cows. And maybe I really don't know exactly, and this book hasn't mentioned what the dialogue is all about, but basically it says that they're actually discussing about, what do you think about cows. And I assume that since Christian ate cows and Hindus did not eat cows, there was a dialogue in that sense. I'm assuming that, I'm not sure. So this appealed to Haryanvis and many freedom fighters of North Indian freedom struggle, including Shamaji Krishna Verma and Lala Lajpat Rai. They were Arya Samajis. So this is what it book talks about. And Swami Dayanand Saraswati, he was from Gujarat, as I told you. He visited Haryana, in 1880, and that's when the seed of Arya Samajis took shape, and Arya Samaj was really popular back in Haryana at that point in time. Now, then this book talks about Congress, and it's pretty important discussion or information that this particular book sheds light on is Arya Samaj was the one, in fact, Arya Samajis were the one who gave the call of Swaraj and not Indian National Congress. Basically, Arya Samajis played a big role in Indian social political movement in the early 19th century, in the early 19th century, in the late 19th century as well. Not early 19th century, I'm sorry, in the late 19th century. That's when the movement took shape, and they wanted, um, uh, a clarion for self government, Swaraj, and they started it in 1875. And on the other hand, Indian National Congress hoisted the Union Jack, the Britishers' flag, and they, in its annual conferences, Indian National Congress prayed for the long life of the British Queen. Can you imagine? And pledged their loyalty to the British Empire. So these were the contrasts that this book talks about. That this is what was happening during the late 19th century, between 1885, after 1885, of course. That's when Indian National Congress came into existence, and that's when this was happening. So during the first Congress session in Mumbai on December 28th and 31st of December, between 28th to 31st December, there were sent 72 delegates, and of them, three were from Punjab, Haryana area. And this region was represented by Lala Muralidhar, who was in the paper Tribune. So imagine the Tribune that we read today, even Tribune still exists today, and this paper was founded in 1881. So that's the kind of information that you get from this book. And it was one of the most reputed paper of the state of Haryana. And then this book says that Lala Muralidhar was also one of the delegates, and he wrote extensively. He was a big critic of British government. He says, and there's a quote of his, and it says that you know I say yes. Look around. What are all these chandeliers and lamps and European-made chairs and tables and smart clothes and hats and English coats, bonnets and frocks? All the items that were made back then, and all the luxurious fitting of your houses, but trophies of India's miseries, the mementos of India's starvation. Every rupee you have spent on Europe made articles is a rupee of which you have robbed your poor brothers, honest handicraftsmen who can now no longer earn a living. So he in his piece is complaining, in this quote, is complaining about the state of affairs in India, that the honest handicraftsmen who were making these items have been robbed of their occupation, and it's all made in Europe and being brought back to India for Indians and Englishmen to use, consume, and that's how the state of India economy deteriorated. And he was considered the grand old man of Punjab. He championed Indian interest in Indian National Congress, of course, which was not really, Indian in a way, because they were basically British, acted like British agents in a way, as I've said to you. And the total British. It also talks about the limitation of Indian National Congress back then was just, was limited to Indian urban class, and the total British expenditure for education in the whole of India was less than half of that of the expenditure of the New York State. Imagine British did not make any contribution in terms of education in India, and which was very, very low, dismal, disappointing figure. So now, Arya Samajis played a lot of a big role in political awareness, which reached Haryana's villages to the deepest corners of Haryana, and it was done through education. So, a major contribution was from Lala Lajpat Rai, who was born in 1865 in Firozpur, Punjab. He became a national leader and he studied in Haryana before shifting to Lahore. He became a lawyer in Hisar and Rohtak, and he was the one who was one of the founding members of Punjab National Bank alongside Dayal Singh. So all of that has been mentioned in this book, and so it says that not much representation of Indian in uh, you know uh, administration happened. Britishers were controlling everything, and up until Morley Minto reforms in 1909, nothing must change. Then this book talks about these three people, Chotu Ram, Sir Chotu Ram, then Sir Chaju Ram, and then Neki Ram. But most of the, I mean, what I've read till now is Sir Chotu Ram and Chaju Ram. So Chotu Ram is somebody who, was a messiah, he was a messiah, and he became this epitome of success. He came from a poor family, made sure that his father was in debt, made sure he paid the debt of the family, and also made sure that he was educated well. He rose to the position of a barrister through his hard work. He was able to do that, and eventually he was able to establish a lot of schools in and around Haryana, and that's what this particular topic talks about. And Chaju Ram was supported by a Haryanvi businessman. Chotu Ram, sorry, was supported by a Haryani businessman called Chaju Ram, who helped him immensely. And so this is what this particular chapter covers. And it also says that Chaju Ram, who was a Haryanvi, he struggled, and but he made sure that in about 10 years time he became successful businessman, and that's how he became a millionaire, multi-millionaire. And by 1928 and 30, he's recorded to have 21 kotis in posh areas of Calcutta. So that's where the trade was back then. And if you are aware, uh, Delhi was not the capital of India back then. Calcutta was. So it was only in 1911 that Delhi became the capital of India. We recently celebrated 100 years of Delhi being capital of India in 2021. So that's the period. So it was before that period, 1911. And so Chajuram was, he worked and worked, and there's a bit of trivia here. The Malaika Sherawat, the Bollywood actress, belongs to the house of family of Chajuram. Uh, it says that she's a great granddaughter of Chajuram's younger brother. So he had a great impact on the life of Choturam, the barrister, and they say that he made kotis for him, and so that's what it talks about basically, and pretty much this what I've read till now covers this. So now we're moving to O Delhi. You are Haryanavi, and I think once you cover that, okay. So we'll start. What I've realized after reading this book, we've almost halfway through in the book. We were left with how much? We left with around 9 pages of the book. But what I realized is that it has an account of the history of the region. It's detailed overview of what happened when and how Haryana and Haryanvis took part in this, and not just Haryanvis, but it also talks about the sentiment of India during that time in that region and how people felt. So all of this has been covered here, and I'll talk about it later. Okay, so I pretty much read the whole chapter now, and I'll give you an idea of what this particular chapter talks about. This part of the chapter talks about. So you, as you're aware that okay, so we have read till now about you know Haryana and Chotu Ram, Chajju Ram, Neki Ram, and all of that, and then the book talks about Sara Samaj. So around the time, as I've said, in 1911, British shifted their capital to Delhi, and British architect Sir Edwin Lutyens was entrusted with the responsibility of forming New Delhi. So the Jat villages of Malcha. So there were, I mean, Delhi that we see now was basically in a group of villages, and still there are certain villages that would still associate and name of the places that still associate with the Jats and their region, like Shahpur Jat, which is a famous place, a fashion, you can say a place where a lot of fashion designers have set up their shops in Delhi. Shahpur Jat still exists. I've been to this place many a times, and so that was that particular area, patch of land was where Jats were living. Malcha again was the place where the Lutyens Delhi, the NDMC area Delhi, where all the ministers' bungalows are, all of that area was called Malcha, and that's where the Jat lived. So they were shifted from there to Sonipat, and the place was Harsana Kalan or even Harsana Malcha. That's where they were shifted, uh, and right now it's a diplomatic area. So Lytton's, all of these people, villages were shifted, and diggings and construction took place around Raisana Hill, on Raisana Hill, where President's Palace residence, Rashtrapati Bhavan, is now situated. So, so the Delhi was so far, was a part of Haryana. All the Jats used to live here. So, and during the time of Mahabharata, also, that Sonipat, Panipat were the two villages which were given to Pandavas, you know, and it included Indraprastha, which is Delhi, modern day Delhi, and also one village from UP, Bagpat. So Sonipat, Panipat, Bagpat, Indraprastha, and I think one more, Tilpat. So that was, and so this was about it, and then World War I broke out, and there were a lot of men who participated in World War I. Rohtak enlisted the maximum number of them, 22,144 men. 22,144 men enlisted between 1915 and 1918, followed by Gurgaon of around 18,000. And this incident, uh, was a big, big, big change, because that's when Mahatma Gandhi arrived in India, and Home Rule League movement started under Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Annie Besant. So this is what happened back then, and then this guy called Neki Ram also participated in Home Rule movement, and he became one of the leaders who kind of started gathering people, speaking out against the British, and Britishers eventually arrested him, and he was sent to jail, and that was a tough period for him. And in fact, it's talked in the book that he was, for 2 years he was in central jail in Ambala, and during that time his family suffered, his daughter died, and all of that. So whole Home Rule League and the Congress, struggle to attain independence of India continued during that time, and Neki Ram was one of the leaders during that time, and he was from Haryana. So that's what this book talks about. And then in year 1909, there was a bombing of the house of Ambala's deputy commissioner. So that also happened, and a lot of leaders came into the picture at the same time from Congress. Veer Savarkar's Chachit, um, you know, Sachindra Nath Sanyal, Rash Bihari Bose, Shamaji Krishna Verma, and those involved in the activities, all of these people had revolutionary thought in them. So, and during that time, it was during the time of World War One, another important development took place was Gadar movement was initiated in US and in India. So there was a lot of people, there were a lot of people who were supporting the cause of getting independence from the British. And one of them was Bhagwan Singh, who visited Vancouver in early 1913 and formed, along with Lala Hardayal, they formed a party called Gadrites. And Kashiram of Ambala was one of the key person here who actually formed the party, made the treasury, and he started collecting contributions from people. But when Kanshiram came back to India, he was arrested, intercepted, and he was hanged. So that's what been told. That's the contribution of Haryana, and British intelligence took active role there and made sure that this happened, and the party could not succeed because they were planning a large mutiny in India. This Gadrai party, and it also talks about you know uh, different reforms that took place. Government of India Act of 1990, which was passed, and then Rowlatt Act was passed. So these two acts, Government of India Act 1919 and Rowlatt Act, were basically designed to give India a lot of autonomy in terms of Indians ruling through their local self government and under the British Raj. But that really didn't strike chord with the Indians because the reforms lagged a lot of uh, fundamental support that, I mean, that should have been in the interest of Indians. That was lacking, because of which, Jallianwala Bagh incident has been talked about, and it says that the situation, because of Rowlatt Act, was tense in Punjab, and on the Baisakhi day, on 13th April 1919, General Rex Dyer opened fire and killed about 15 to 20,000 people. And that's when Haryana also, participated big time, and resolutions were passed in different towns of the state. Satyagraha committees were formed to oppose the bill, the Government of India Act and Rowlatt India Act. And records share the story of a missionary. During that time, there was a missionary called Reverend Carlin, and he died in Rohtak. But nobody, no carpenter came to make his coffin. No one came to make his coffin because they were all against Britishers that time. The sentiment was so against British that nobody came to build his coffin, and it was easy to find a labor to dig his grave so that it could be put inside it. I mean, put in the grave. So, public meetings happen in Bhiwali's Hartal demonstration, Rohtak, Bahadurgarh, Sonipat, Ballabgarh, Gurgaon, Satrod, Panipat, Ladwa, Karnal, Jagidri. All of these places, had a lot of protests, and you know, um, so and it is said that during that time, apart from arranging a 16-seater motor bus and an armored train, Britisher wanted to, make sure that, things did not go out of control. Uh, Bahadurgarh region, aeroplane hovered over Sonipat, Rohtak, and Bahadurgarh region in 1907 to control the agitated population. Not 1907, I'm sorry. 1930, post 1913, post Jallianwala Bagh massacre. 1919, post 1919, I'm sorry. And so British government announced something called Hunter Commission to inquire into the events of the Jallianwala Bagh incident, and Dyer, the butcher, he was famously called the butcher of Amritsar then. And it reportedly stated that he had gone to the Bagh with the intention of opening fire if he found a crowd there. And he made up his mind in advance. Well, the commission thought that, there was no problem with that. He might have killed 15 to 20,000 Indians, and he walked out free. Can you imagine? And by 1920, non-cooperation movement came into picture because they were against Britishers, Rowlatt Act, Jallianwala Bagh, all added to that fire. And they were rallying against Britishers. In Rohtak district alone, about 80 Congress committee were formed, In one of the movement in Rohtak on 8th of October 1920, Gandhiji came with the Ali brothers of Khilafat movement, and in Rewari, he said in one of the meetings, he declared that give me Khadar and I'll give you Swaraj, Gandhiji. And in Rewari, a wedding was deferred because the groom refused to marry the bride who was wearing the foreign dress. So all of that was happening. A lot of arrests happened. 719 arrests happened in Punjab province, and out of those, Haryana had 500 arrests. The share of Haryana was 500, so which was really huge. I mean, considering the territorial share of Haryana in Punjab province. And now the contribution that I talked about, Chotu Ram, Jat leader Arya Samaji Chotu Ram, he joined Congress in 1916, but then he broke out of Congress because he didn't believe in the fact that the way the Congress was being operated during that time, and he didn't believe in that. So he resigned and he formed his own party with Lala Chand Fogat. And Lala Chand Fogat, he and Chotu Ram made a party, and that was called the Unionist Party. And if just for the trivia, Lala Chand, who was, and Chotu Ram, who formed the party, is, you know, um, his eldest son, Raghvendra Singh, is the one who founded the real estate company DLF, which exists today, and it's called Delhi Land and Finance. So Raghvendra Singh is the son of Lal Chand, who formed Unionist Party with Chotu Ram back in that day. So the way he supported Choturam built on this unity of the because if you remember, he became a barrister, and he's practiced in Agra, and then his practice flourished. And this guy Choturam was a Jat leader, Jat barrister, and he made a call for people of agrarian societies, especially the Jats, to unite, and he gave it the name of Ajgar, which meant Ahir, Jat, Gujar, and Rajput. So, which was opposed by Congress and Hindu Mahasabha, that why you're forming this acronym, why you want to separate these castes from the central concept of making sure that we gain freedom. So politics has started taking root in Haryana, and Chotu Ram plan was underway. And so, as I said to you, the Lal Chand and Chotu Ram jumped into election, and they won from Jhajjar Sonipat. Lal Chand, Chotu Ram won, and from Rohtak Gohana, Lal Chand won the seat. So that's what this book talks about, and eventually he gave this saying, Chotu Ram. He used to tell, because at that point in time what was happening was a lot of money lenders were under British rule. It was so such that you can raise money. uh, you, if you remember in yesterday's live stream, I told you that under British rule you had to pay two times during the year, in February and in September, and both these months were not the harvest month. It was much before harvest, so the farmers did not have the money to pay the taxes to the Britishers. So they had to borrow money from money lenders, and at times they had to, pawn their land so that they could mortgage their land so that they could get money from these lenders. And these money lenders, levied huge taxes, huge rates of interest on them. Sorry, rate of interest on them, and made sure that they gained a lot out of. So this was a cruel clutch or vicious circle where the peasant, the poor farmer, was under the burden of paying to the money lender, because he had to pay the Britishers the taxes two times in a year, and he had to also make sure that he tilled the land, grew the harvest, and was totally dependent on rain. And he also had to pay back the money that he took from money lender along with the interest, heavy interest. So for that, Chotu Ram really did a great amount of work. And he said he had a slogan that जमींदार ज्यादा नहीं तो एक बात मान ले, एक बोलना ले सीख, एक दुश्मन पहचान ले. जमींदार ज्यादा नहीं तो एक बात मान ले, एक बोलना बोलना ले सीख, एक दुश्मन पहचान ले. In English, it translates to Zamindar, forget about all other things, but accept my one advice. Learn to speak out your mind. Learn to speak out your mind fearlessly and identify your enemy. So he used to say all of this in his rallies, and he was fondly remembered as Deen Bandhu Chotu Ram. He was later on called Sir Chotu Ram, and he played in all the important decisions, which had a bearing on the lives of the farmers of Haryana. So this is where he also ensured that he made a lot of acts. Uh, and I said Choduram was instrumental in formulating and pushing several path-breaking acts, such as Punjab Regulation of Accounts Act. It aimed at preventing moneylenders from manipulating accounts and cheating illiterate zamindars. Punjab Relief and Indebtedness Act, so that the interest rate did not rise. Reps there are about 8 acts that he passed. He was able to instrumental in passing those acts, and it was all to protect farmers, because he had this kind of childhood where he suffered badly because of money lenders, and his father was in debt which he had to pay, and then he had a difficult childhood, so he understood the problems of the farmers. And that's why he was hailed as a big hero among the farmer community in Haryana back then and even now. So Sir Chotu Ram also did an important thing in 1945, before his death, that in 1945, he before his death in 1945, I mean to say, he revived the long dormant Bhakra Nagar Dam project, and signing the agreement with Maharaja of Bilaspur, in whose territory the catchment area, I mean, where the water would flow from Bhakra Nagar and flow in to regions of Haryana. So he signed a treaty, and though the idea of the dam was conceived in 1884, but because of his intervention just after independence, Jawaharlal Nehru inaugurated that dam, and it was the highest gravity dam in the world at that point in time. So he was called the Masiha of farmers because of that. His contribution, his immense contribution. So we get to know about Sir Chotu Ram in this chapter and what his contributions were. And also it's mentioned that since he was, again, as I told you, he was a poor guy, and so what he did was, for the needy, he started this welfare fund with an initial contribution of about 30 lakhs, and it was a brainchild of Chotu Ram. And one of the beneficiary of the scheme was Pakistani Nobel laureate Dr. Abdul Salam. And Dr. Salam became one of the greatest scientists of Pakistan. And he was awarded Nobel Prize in Physics in 1979, for physics in 1979. And so if it was not for Chotu Ram's welfare fund, which was about rupees 550 back then a month, I think Dr. Salam would not have been able to achieve his dreams. He went to Cambridge and got the degree and all of that. So that's what's been talked about, and then it talks about a period in Haryana between 1923 and 28 when it was marked by communal riots. A lot of riot happened. We hear about it's an interesting fact. It's like a analogy, I can say so. A similarity in the time periods. I mean, right now we hear a lot of people converting to Islam, and then uh, all of those things that were happening in UP a few years back. Um, Ghar Vapsi, wherein all the women who were converted into Islam faith were coming back to the Hindu fold. So that was happening back then also, and it happened in Haryana between 1923 and 28. Hindus called it Shuddhi, conversion to Hinduism, and Tabligh, it was called conversion to Islam. And between 1923 and 1928, Haryana witnessed 14 different instances of religious riots. So that was happening then, and records suggest that why this happened is because Panipat, one of the regions in Haryana, had a population of Muslims of about 19,975 people, close to 20,000. And while that of Hindu was one third of it, close to 6,500. So you can imagine, riots breaking out, and Tablighi Jamaat, which we have heard of 2 years back when they were, you know, if you remember, in Delhi's Nizamuddin area, it was heard that Tablighi Jamaat people have been contracted with virus, and they were kind of in news all over back then. So Tablighi Jamaat actually, Mewat was the birthplace of Tablighi Jamaat, and that happened in 1920s. And would you imagine that? No, there's something that I did not know, and this is a trivia for you and me also. That Mio culture, where there was a tradition of people praying to Shiva alongside following Islamic practices. So there was a culture called Meo culture, MEO. It was an intermix of Hindu and Muslim traditions. But in 1920, there was a change in order. A preacher named Muhammad Ilyas, he was clearly miffed, clearly upset about this composite culture, and initiated Jamaat, Tablighi Jamaat. So the conduct of neo Muslims, he's it's astonished that why they praying Shiva, and so he took them to a village called Firozpur and taught them how to recite kalma, how to offer namaz. He developed a badi masjid, bada madrasa in Nu, at Nu, and Tablighi Jamaat was formed 4 years later in 1926-27. And in 1932, a large Mio Panchayat was organized by Maulana Ilyas, which was attended by 107 Chaudhries, and many subjects like offering namaz, establishing new mosques, and expansion of Islamic education while not interrupting the local styles of dressing was discussed. So during that time, a change in attire of Muslim women happened. So shedding of the traditional odani, the Hindu style odani, and inclusion of more Arabic names changed the Mio society completely. And women played a big role. They went from village to village to explain the importance of reading the namaz. So all of that, has been explained. It happened in Mewat region. So this was an inflection, a change in the Mewat history back then of Haryana. So back to what was happening in India, Pan India, a commission, Simon Commission, was called in India, and was opposed with black flags. If you're aware, Lala Lajpat Rai died in a lathi charge when British army or British soldiers or British police, they charged at him and they hit him on his chest with the lathis, and he died. Because of his death, there was a widespread rebellion, and in December, Rajguru and Bhagat Singh shot dead John Saunders, the one who, lathi charged on Lala Lajpat Rai. And Lala Lajpat Rai, was from Hisar, a great freedom fighter. He practiced law there, and he was associated with towns, municipalities. So Lala Lajpat Rai is one of the uh, regions, Haryana's leader that this book talks about. And Haryana also participated in civil disobedience movement, and all of that's been mentioned here. And eventually, this book also talks about two struggles called Haryana Satyagraha and Loharu struggle, where the Hindu majority Haryana state, Hyderabad state, sorry, was ruled by Muslim Nizam. So he started imposing restrictions of on Hindus' way of life, and so what he was doing is that he was saying that since it's ruled by Muslim ruler, you cannot practice Hindu religion here. So, so there was a satyagraha that was announced by Arya Samajis in Haryana, 2,000 kilometer away, and eventually, Hyderabad state was compelled to give the right to worship to all Arya Samajis and all Hindus. And similar thing happened in Loharu, which was ruled by a Muslim Nawab. And in 1940, Arya Samajis were carrying out a procession, and this procession was stopped and attacked near a mosque. Can you relate it to a recent event that happened in Delhi? Remember, something happened on Ram Navami. So something of that sort was also happening back then. I mean, we're talking about, 70 years back. So Hindu Muslim problem existed long time back and still exists today. So it's not a new thing. And so all of that's been mentioned here. Eventually, Britishers were finding it difficult to rule India because after the Second World War, 1939, it was difficult to manage the affairs of India, and that's when Quit India movement also came into picture. And interestingly, INA formed, Indian National Army, under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose, and a lot of Haryanis took part. And if you remember, in 2019, INA soldiers who were soldiers in Subhash Chandra Bose's army took part in Republic Day parade for the first time, and all four soldiers who participated, were from Haryana. It mentions Bhagmal, 100 years old, from Manasa, Lalti Ram from Jhajjar, Hira Singh from Narnaul, and Parmanand Yadav from Chandigarh. So all of these people, are part of Haryana. And there's a small, share a trivia again before this chapter ends. It says that India was divided in two countries, Pakistan and India, and Liaquat Ali Khan became the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And there's a connection here, Haryana connection with Liaquat Ali, is that a legal Muslim university and Oxford University educated Liaquat Ali Khan was born in Karnal, Haryana, on 1st of October 1895. So all of these Haryana connections have been mentioned in this book, and this pretty much covers the fourth chapter. We have come to the end. I mean, it's all done. Now we'll start with chapter 5 tomorrow. I hope to read a part of it so that it becomes easier for me to explain to you, because I think you know if I read and talk to you at the same time, it'll be much more interesting. And this is pretty much 26 page 13 pages chapter, so it's a small chapter in comparison to this one. And I hope to catch up with you tomorrow around the same time, 8 o'clock, and let me know what your thoughts are about this stream. I didn't see many people participating today, and I think I hope you get to watch the stream, or you if you and let's meet tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming here, and let's join tomorrow. Thank you.